Good morning and welcome to our UU Holton Sunday Service online edition coming to you from the Unitarian Parlor in Holton, Maine. We thank you for joining us on this fine Sunday in November, the last Sunday in November, holiday weekend. We want to thank you for showing up and for helping us hold the space, sacred space for community and mutual support. Today we have author George Peabody with us from Woodstock, New Brunswick, who will be reading from his book Atlantis, an elegy, a poem about the construction of the Macquarie Dam on the St. John River and its consequent effects. We'd like to welcome both George and his wife Deborah to the service this morning. Glad that you're here. Welcome to the day. Let us find our breath and our center, breathing in and breathing out. And we're going to do a little sonic therapy, vibrational attunement this morning with our crystal ball and Joshua. If you would assist us with that. And we're going to combine it with our new gong that arrived at the Unitarian Society just before Thanksgiving. So as we listen, using the sound and the energy, allow it to attune and to center your body, mind, energy this morning. In our moment of centering silence, let us be mindful and alert to the here and now. Let us sit calmly, breathe, and listen to the sound of the singing. Let us light your chalice.
Sorry.
Mary Alice, would you do honors for us? In times of darkness, light is not absent, diminished perhaps, but still present. We seek the light. So with the theme for today's service, I wanted to bring in a few images to set the tone. And these were taken just before Thanksgiving holiday. This would be the bend in the stream on the north branch of the Cave right on home in Monticello. So these photographs come from the Duxnicade watershed system that's flowing into the greater St. John. So the source of the North Branch is number 9 mountain by Bridgewater. The west of Bridgewater Moon is the primary source of the North Branch. And the South Branch down in the Holton area, the source would be Drew's Lake, or the original name, Duxnicade Lake. And most of us here have properties and are living on the terrain that is being drained by this Duxnicade watershed system. And this was after the snowstorm Wednesday afternoon. I skied down to the cabin to get a few of these photographs. So the North Branch and South Branch flow into Canada and meet just below Jackson Falls and New Brunswick, continuing its journey towards downtown Woodstock, where it enters into the St. John River, and then heading towards St. John, New Brunswick, where it enters Bay of Fundy. On its way to the eastern coast of Newfoundland, where Linda and I were this summer, and then flowing into the greater Atlantic on its way. And in our in-gathering service, it was interesting, so many of us share stories about the impact of the watershed and the water that we live beside and draw our life stories from. And I had never thought of sitting by this stream and realizing that sitting in St. John's, Newfoundland this summer, that it was that water course flow that was still heading easterly to that direction. And these are just a few overhead drone shots of the first snowstorm. Hang on tight. We're not going very far. We're not going to be going all the way to Woodstock on this journey. But it gives you a little feel of the movement and the sunlight interacting on water. So what I have here is a map of the North Branch watershed, but the little red dot to the left would be where Linda and I live, on the bend by Monticello Station. And then if you follow downstream through downtown Monticello to the other red dot is where it crosses the border into New Brunswick, about 3 miles downstream. The poet Gary Snyder, back in the 1970s, coined a term I was not familiar with called watershed politics. And he talked about the artificial lines that are created by countries, geographically. But the better way to think and to align politically might be with shared watersheds. The interests of people upstream have with people downstream, and vice versa, is a way to manage and to view your local geography. And I remember I've explored the river extensively, from number 9 all the way down to that red marker when it crosses the Canadian border, and then it's like the river stops. So looking forward to today's service, still wanting to explore more that's downstream. This morning you'll find rocks on the table over here to your left, and on the altar are a few rocks from the stream in the North Branch. And I want to read for opening words this morning a short poem that I wrote years ago. It's titled Alongside of the Next Decade. Alongside of the next decade is how I spend my time, living my life for no one else but myself and those who share this life, who love it as I. It may not seem like I'm doing much idle days in the woods, but the birds and brook trout can see my point of view that's a little fuzzy to some people around me who wonder what I could be doing all day. No cable or ESPN available to catch the highlights of my day that starts and finishes much the same way every day, and days on end, which is just so. The river flows by my life day after day in the woods, never the same, yet neither am I, so it seems. The sun and the rain, the wind and drifting snow blow across the scenery of each day, each moment, each thought, moving towards a new place in my life. Who knows where it's going, except downstream, to empty into something larger and farther away, yet connected to where I am right now, alongside the next decade. You'll notice a theme developing in today's service with rivers and water. Hence our first song, number 100. We are going to sing, I've Got Peace Like a River. Number 100. And please stand as you are able. And we're going to sing just the 4 first verses. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we're going to do all 6. It's fine print on the bottom. We're going to do them all. I've got peace beside the river. I've got peace beside the river. I've got peace beside the river in my soul. I've got peace beside the river. I've got peace beside the river. I've got peace beside the river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. by Langston Hughes titled, I've Known Rivers. And we are going to read this in unison. Number 528. I've known rivers. I've known rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood and human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the graves when mountains were young. I built my hut in the Congo and I loved me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and the first pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and seeing its mighty bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I know rivers, ancient dusty rivers, my soul is deep like the rivers. This book showed up on my desk a couple of months ago with a note attached saying I needed to read this book, that it was a book for me. And it turns out that it was. And the author just happened to be across the border in Woodstock, New Brunswick. Since our theme for this year, Earth Care, Building Eco-Community in the Midst of Environmental Change and Challenge, also seemed to connect with this book. We started working on this service, plotting to bring George across the border for a service where he could read from this poem, which it's book length. Gary Snyder also made an attempt at a book length poem, and George is going to be reading from this morning. George Peabody is a lifetime environmental and cultural preservation activist. He's also administrator of the Meduxnicade River Association, a community-based nonprofit land trust organization in Woodstock, New Brunswick. And we're glad that he is here today, as we are all part of this watershed system. I'm going to read what Keith Helmuth wrote in the afterword. One brief comment. Keith is also a good friend of ours here. And he wrote, "The literature of place continually lifts up the human-earth relationship and a sense of home. Atlantis, and LG, is a deeply felt and fully realized contribution to this natural history of our cultural life." So with that, George, please come forward and share with us this morning. And let's welcome George with a round of applause.
Thank you very much. And before I actually start, some of you will already know that this, to a large extent, is about the construction of the Magdequac Dam and the effect that it had on the Woolstook, the St. John River. And I noticed Nancy sent me your, I guess, your online bulletin. And whoever wrote that, I thank you for referring to the Magdequac Dam with D-A-M-N. I don't know whether it was a typo or deliberate, but if it wasn't, it was an elegant typo. This is called Atlantis and Elegy. I was a child before the flood. Our home was perched above the shore, protected by a slope we burned each year to force the phoenix grass to lush and green profusion from the ashes of its splendid death. We flailed the edges of the flames with spruce boughs which had banked the house, and scrambled up and down the slope between the lawn and water's edge, dragging flaming cattail heads to spread the fire out in lines. A rite of spring, I call it now, as if the name defined the thing. The water took that slope long since, took the lawn and took the house, took the cut grass, took the trees, drowned those trees that lined the shore, water maples, ash, and elm, the willows bent like farmers' backs to drop their seed into the flow whose ceaseless current spread their kind from river's start to river's end. I saw the seasons in that stream, their stately whirl and spiral time, when ice would heave and crush itself, defeated by another year's conspiracy of sun and rain. The freshet flush that followed full, stained with the brown of forest roots, the water spilling over banks, embracing trees, caressing fields with gentle, timeless, savage strokes. We'd launch the boat my uncle built and paddle till our arms were sore, and still we'd dig and pull and watch to see the trees slide slowly back, to gain the slack of silver fields where gullies ran like veins into the labyrinth hearts of continents unknown to other times of year. One evening, not long after dusk had merged the water with the sky, we turned the boat to drift downstream, when from the darkness came the logs, escapees from a bursting boom 100 miles or more away, gleaming brown in awkward herds like river monsters out for fun. They nudged our flanks, and we began to draw them in, to guide them home, flotsam free foundation sills that could be used to start a barn, matching adolescent strength against the ancient freshet surge, a little convoy inching in as if to mock the springtime sight of tugs that drew the cookboats up from winter berths beside the bay, a string of beads in child-bright hue which pulled reluctant at the towboat's stern in chocolate water churned to violent froth by power hid from eyes ashore where children watched them disappear beyond the bend. Great power oftentimes is hid and seldom can be understood, not even when it's clearly seen, as clear as float plane hung in sky above the brown tumult of pulp that scrapes against the river banks like lemmings flowing to the sea, as clear as paint spots on our logs that mark them with a brand so deep within our minds we set them free when morning sun revealed the stain, as clear as red-topped survey stakes that sprout like toadstools on the shores above the highest freshet marks, auguries of the larger flood. I had not learned to read the signs. I dreamed no cataclysmic dreams. I knew the constancy of change, certain and uncertain both, the marks of life, of living things that grow and die and are reborn in cycles great and cycles small. I watched the water rise and fall, heard its voices change their call from hour to hour, from day to day, never silent, never still. Even locked in winter ice, the hope of change was held by springs along the shore, which kept it fresh and undermined the solid shield with sudden pools that threw up steam like exhaled breath in winter dawns. At first the springs, and then the pools, and then the ducks on whistling wings to bring the lurching seasonal change, the freshet fury fast removed, the breathy rush of thrill subsumed, and humble magic placid days. To pole a boat past shallow shores, or ride an eddy up the stream, to comb the banks for fiddleheads, for bloodroot, or for adders' tongues, to watch a muskrat's arrowhead of water spread in lazy light, to stay as still as standing stone and watch a wood duck lead her brood the little distance down the brook from nest and tree to life afloat, to see a sudden summer flood sink aftergrass on intervals, make roses shine beneath the boat, their petals pale like faces drowned, though lovely still, and still alive. These passing treasures of a week, these lasting diamonds of a life. To walk on sandy island soil in the hush of green cathedral trees, where vines as thick as haywarp hung from high above, as if designed to use as swings, fixed so secure the weight of 2 or even 3 small boys, applied with running leaps, would scarce produce the slightest give. To pass to where at island's head, against the first bulwark of trees, the magpie freshet had for years deposited its varied hoard of cans and bottles, logs and bones, a vast untidy mingled heap of all that floated cast ashore, renewed and rearranged each spring, and yielding worthless valuables to probing sticks and eager hands. The triumph of discovery outlives the finds. The ends grow pale and indistinct and disappear. Not so the means. Experience remains the only jewel in all the hoard, as slippery and as hard to kill as eels we hooked for fun on summer nights when firelight had lured them close enough to shore. In daylight, other anglers came. All summer long we saw them stand where ripples danced on gravel bars and swing their supple bamboo rods with flies they tied to fool the fish. All summer long the salmon came and mostly spurned the offered bait to jump instead in favored pools and flash like silver in the sun. That summer of my 19th year, I only had the old excuse. I didn't know, I needed work, I did what I was told, no more. I learned the light precision touch to snap the jaws of hoppers wide and dump the concrete, fill the trucks, which fed the cranes to build the dam. The cranes that stood as herons stood among the pools along the shore when August sapped the river's strength. Each autumn sent those herons south, or so I thought. One winter, though, when clearing snow to make a rink below the cove where ice was best, I found a shape embedded there beneath my skates, a shadow form of blue-gray life, but real and sharp as if entrapped by winter's grasp, while eyes still sought for fish and frogs. In dream, I saw the cranes entrapped, the concrete rising round their steel. By summer's end, I knew for sure that I would be no engineer. I did not wait to see the flood. There was no sudden massive surge, no panic-stricken human flight. The gates were ceremonially closed like Kali's sacred strangling scarf. The water gathered dark and slow to shroud the rubble heaps where homes had stood, the amputated trees, as false as fog had covered creeks, a first and final tidal bore, a flow not followed by an ebb, time turned back upon itself, a single scene forever fixed. All is changed and changeless now. The sweeping curves that current cut, geometry, geological, are broken by the human line. The river chafes between its banks, uninterrupted now for miles before a bend that even man could not erase provokes a shift, begins another sterile stretch. The tourists stop at scenic spots. Their cameras see the autumn hills where maples watch their mirror selves reflected in the lake below. Like perfect ghosts, those long-drowned shores are still unwilling to release. The gulls that once we hungered for as solitary signs of spring come now each fall in crying crowd to bleach the fields behind the plow and float in mercenary flocks between the bland amorphous shores like strangers at a funeral feast. The salmon ride upstream in trucks. The water darkly slaps the steel of temporary prison walls. As blind as cave fish in that gloom, they bump their boundaries, flex their fins, and taste the staleness on their gills. Perhaps recall the greenish glow of ice-hung oceans left behind. Or maybe dream of gravel bars with depths of cool outside the sun reflecting from the polished stones. Along the turgid lake they pass, unseeing and unseen. The bars are drowned, and tourists come to cast for bass, while sullen little waves gnaw the shores with mud-stained teeth. Thank you.
So George, don't go anywhere. Please come back. Let's just field a few questions. We have a good 10 minutes before coffee hour, which we have lobster appetizers. Hot lobsters. So if you have questions for George regarding the poem, the dam, the future of the dam, this is a wide open, this is a very emotional poem. Just listening to it, and for me, the words, the poem just flows like a stream. Probably you've heard people say that before. Just open this up to a few questions and comments if you have for George while he's here.
I have a comment. We moved here 4.5 years ago, right at the other branch of the Mid-Oxney Cave. We're right on top of that, and then quickly learned how in 1776 this agreement was made with the native Maliseets to trade war power for the land, and but there was a treaty with the foreign nation that here in the United States that all the rivers floating into the St. John's River are now part of Indian land, and this has since moved on. But anyway, in all of this, one day this was in August 3rd this year, I took a drive along, by chance, the Mid-Oxney to Woodstock, then down to St. John's along the St. John's River, and back. And it was a time I needed to think about some things, and I had some wonderful revelations. And I credit the river and these streams for really enjoying life up here. And I think there's a special energy here that I feel. And it's lovely when you go to Woodstock and you go there to the river restaurant, which is very nice. You sit there and the two rivers come together right there. So thank you very much for bringing that back to me.
George, I was a child before the flood as well. I particularly remember the flooding of Jesus and Homer's home in the floods. I understand, I've heard, I'm not up to date, but I hear the map back down is not in good condition. What is happening
take responsibility for that. I dumped concrete for it after all. Yes, you're right. It dates back, actually it does date back to the construction of the thing when somebody maybe was getting a little bit of a backhander on some of the materials that were being used, and the aggregate that was used in the concrete was not quite right, despite there was a lot of testing that went on, with the result that it expands slightly over time, and over time it's expanded enough that the chambers where the turbines are getting out of true, so that there's a limited amount of time that the turbines are going to be useful. So NV Power has been looking at possible resolutions of that for quite a long time now. In fact, they've been cutting a small slice out of the dam every year to lessen the effect. It worked so far, but they went through a whole process and came up with a number of possible solutions, one of which was to sell it to Quebec Hydro, and Quebec Hydro decided they didn't want it. Another would be to remove the turbines and decommission the dam. A third would be to decommission the dam but leave it. A third would be to remove the dam entirely. And the fourth, which they appear to be heading towards now, will be to create a new turbine house on the other side of the river from the current one and try to get the dam to continue to generate power for another 60 years. Now that's, 60 years. It'll be, they're talking in the neighborhood of $5 to $6 billion Canadian to do that, which would be about $1.5 billion. No, I exaggerate. But it would be 5 to 6 billion, and with NV Power's record of estimating costs, it would probably be 10 billion by the time they get it done, if they can manage to get it done. That's the status now, is that they are presently committed to keeping the dam and building a new powerhouse to be able to run for another 60 years. And Dee's Homer would have appreciated the DAM in, I think.
Thank you, George. This has been really nice to hear, from such a personal perspective, and the way that you were able to eloquently describe both the environment and allude to the emotions that are involved with that. Excellent job.
Dave mentioned, this is not connected with this, but Dave mentioned that I'm also the administrator at the Mexican River Association. He calls CAO, but there's only two of us. And I think I should be a CAOAO, which would be Chief and Only Administrative Officer. The Mexican River Association, over the past 25 years, has now protected permanently a bit over 1,000 acres, mostly riparian property along the Mexican and mostly on the main stem rather than on the, we don't really have anything on the north branch, but mostly on the main stems of the Mexican. And we have this as the Mexican Valley Nature Preserve. On some of the properties, there's 20 or so separate properties. And on some of the properties, we have walking trails, not groomed and manicured walking trails, but rough walking trails, about 20 kilometers of them, which are open, marked, and open to anyone who wants to use them. We use them, 3 or 4 of them in particular, with our education programs, in which we take school classes out for the elementary school kids, usually for hour-long curriculum-linked guided nature walks on the trails, and 3 different science workshops that we do with middle school and high school classes that are hands-on but are longer, 2 and a half, 2-hour workshops. Last school year, we took just over 2,800 students out for these. This fall, as of now, we've taken 600 and some, I think, on nature walks. And it's a very, very rewarding and satisfying occupation. It was one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done. We also take snowshoe tours for kids as well, from kindergarten all the way up. Kindergarten snowshoe tours are notable for taking the first 15 minutes to get the snowshoes on, and the last 15 minutes to get the snowshoes off, but are fun. And if anybody is interested in the nature preserves, I actually brought a very large map which shows you all the nature preserves in relationship to the rest of the river. I think it ends at 4. And thinking of mapping, when I started working on this, one of the things, because we did look at it, we did and do, it makes sense to look at it as a full watershed. One of the difficulties of doing that in a mapping sense is that the mapping that's done on this side doesn't talk to the mapping that's done on the other side. So there is apparently no way to pull them together to make a single topographic map of the watershed. They're on different scales, and nobody so far, we gave up after a while. But we had people from both New Brunswick and Maine looking at it, and they decided, no, it's not going to work. We can't do a single map with the same scale for the watershed. So, yes.
Thank you so much, because we have been to the Meduxneakag Valley Trails.
Okay, good.
We have gone across Woodstock and back roads.
Yep.
We've gone to the grocery store over there and other retail establishments and gotten picnic lunch and really out in nature. Listening to the babbling brook is really a beautiful sound when everything else is frozen up. And being able to access public land trails is inspiration for what we're making over here. And so really your mapping is really a good thing to have at the trailhead and your parking.
Yep.
It's really a good thing because we're blessed back here in our backyard to have parking. And the Holton town has a mapping of the streets. And we're hopeful that this is the coming year that the funding is going to come in place to make the sidewalks safer for sauntering and downtown hiking and such. So truly, again, thank you. Trails are important.
Yeah, very. One of the things that I've noticed with elementary school classes is that we have kids who are maybe in grade 2, grade 3, who don't know how to walk other than on pavement and level surfaces. Take them out in the woods where there's roots that they've got to step over on the trail, and they panic. And they really slowly, but that's such an odd thing to me in this area, which is essentially a rural area. We're raising urban kids.
As an add-on to that, we do have an aging and disabled congregation and population in our community. And so we have a sanctuary space next door that's been open flat for people with walkers and wheelchairs who need to actually get out and exercise but can't otherwise.
Yeah.
So we have a space here that's open after services, so anybody who wants to walk and stretch their legs, you're welcome in the sanctuary. Sorry, but truly, I mean, outside is awesome.
Oh, yeah, there's both ways. That's one of the problems with our trails is that they're ups and downs. And it's the nature of the terrain. We don't have an area where, and believe me, we've looked at it and we've tried to, but we don't have an area where we could feasibly put a easily accessible trail for people who have mobility issues.
We're putting a little boardwalk in our place so that people with a wheelchair or a jazzy can go out farther. Not the whole way, but we're planning a 1,200-foot decking. And it's a project, but we're in a land of timbers. And manpower is.
And money.
Yeah. Mary Ellen, go ahead.
I wanted to say thank you for sharing such a phenomenal creative process. And this came up, I don't know about it, but my entry into and I grew up very close to was Bonnie Lake County, when I was a very young woman. And there was a lot of you. And it kind of speaks to what we've been talking about, the urban, that there are many ways into understanding and embracing. And the power of it reminded me, thank you for remembering this very precious thing that happened a long time ago, but also how important it is to have all of these ways of knowing how to live connected.
And I would be remiss in my duties as an author if I didn't mention in a mercenary fashion that I do have copies of the book for anybody who'd like
I have a comment and a question. I'm dropping some of the comments, but the comment is, and this is, I'm being a little bit mischievous, but George has Dr. McKay Association T-shirt with a crocodile. And so the kids, when they go for walks, if they George happens to be wearing.
I do. I wear it sometimes with when I'm taking classes. It says crocodilos. Maybe beware of crocodiles in Spanish anyway. And I got it. We used to pre-COVID sometimes go to a little Mexican town for a time in the winter called Puerto Morelos. And there's a park there where there's a crocodile that lives. And they had this sign, sweet head crocodile, where they a sort of drawing of a crocodile, not a photograph of a crocodile. And I was quite attracted to it. And Deborah, we took a photograph of it. And I got somebody here to do me a T-shirt that has Biloxi Cape Valley Nature Preserve and beware of crocodiles in it. And occasionally kids will say, crocodiles here. And I go, oh yeah, northern woods crocodiles. You gotta watch out for them. So, that was a comment, Nancy. Now you
That was a comment. I have a question. And this, you may not want to talk about it now, maybe a coffee hour thing, but there are a couple of mine sites proposed for close to the watershed.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, how close are they going to be and what that might be too much of a question. But.
Well, there's two manganese mining claims that are active in the Meduxnagate watershed. One of them, which is one that we're most concerned with would be, the mine would be an open pit mine and would be actually within 200 meters of the bank of the river. And the last dimensions I saw was like 500 meters across and maybe 300 deep. They are still doing environmental and ecological survey work for it. The last we heard is that they won't be moving towards a environmental impact assessment process for about a year. And they're, which means that they're 18 months behind the schedule that they thought they were going to be on. They did receive another round, the company did receive another round of funding about 3 months ago, I think, so they haven't run out of money yet. That may possibly go ahead. Either one of them may possibly. The other one's a little bit further from is sort of on the edge of the watershed on the other side of the river and back, you know, where Jacksonville is in near Woodstock. It's out around there, but it's right on the edge of the watershed as well. Excuse me, they're doing a different process. The one close to the river so far, or in its current iteration anyway, is just intended as a mine and a sort of to mine and middle the ore so that they concentrate it down a bit, but they don't refine it. The other one is planning apparently on using a refining process that would be heavily dependent on sulfuric acid, among other things, and would not be, it is much more likely to be a tailings issue than the dry one on that we're more concerned with. We're more concerned with that one because it's close to the river and it's in an area of, I should go back and say, one of the reasons that we began acquiring land there in the first place was that the Mexican watershed on the New Brunswick side of the border has quite a lot of what's called Appalachian hardwood forest, which is a hardwood forest type in that part of New Brunswick, but nowhere else in Atlantic Canada to any extent. And it has over 25 plant species that are provincially rare. So what they're proposing, where they're proposing for the mine is actually in one of the areas where there are provincially rare plant species and in an area around it as well. That one we're most concerned with. And the manganese is in demand, if you follow these things, is in demand because it's one of the key ingredients in lithium-ion batteries that are both for electric vehicles and for they're thinking now of community level storage facilities as well. The hope that I'm sort of holding out is that battery technology is changing so fast and there are so many research universities that have active projects in looking at different types of battery technology that by the time they get ready to mine the manganese for this one, it may be outdated by a battery that doesn't use manganese. There is actually a sulfur ion battery that the Swedes have just announced that they're at the level of commercial development on that doesn't use manganese and has advantages over lithium ion. Doesn't heat up as much and is rechargeable faster. So I'm hoping that may be an issue with the people who would have to put up the several hundreds of millions of dollars to develop a mine for manganese if they can look 5 years in the future and say, maybe the 25 years of manganese there is not going to be worth putting the money into, but who knows. Is that
Well, George, thanks so much for sharing your poem with us today. to extinguish the chalice for now.
We want to thank everybody for tuning in today. If you'd like to show your support, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel if you're not already subscribed, and help us out by sharing this message by clicking the share button. If you'd like to make a monetary donation to UU Church Holton, there is a link to our online donations in the video description down below. And again, thank you so much and have a blessed day.